I'm sure everyone watching is already aware of how icebergs work, but I stumbled upon this particular one while browsing Reddit. Posted by Gangstar for Life on r/creepygaming, I recognized a handful of these titles from my Flash gaming days and wanted to share all of them with you. The House is one of the most recognizable point-and-click titles of all time. I remember loading up Game Shed in the dark and playing it, and back then the jump scares really got me. But now it's kind of boring. The objective is to escape the house, but you must go through a series of rooms before that is possible. Essentially, you just have to click on things over and over again until something happens and you go on to the next room. It's definitely iconic, but I think the next entry is better. Exmortis is a point-and-click horror title created by Ben Leffler and uploaded to Newgrounds on August 27, 2004. I have already talked about this game in a previous video in a little more depth, but it is a game I feel a lot of nostalgia for. Exmortis does a lot to build some atmosphere before any progress really occurs. You find yourself freezing in the woods with no idea how you got there. Seeing a house in the distance, you decide to enter to avoid freezing to death. Once inside, you can explore a little bit. You can go upstairs or head towards the kitchen, and I like the lack of music, as all you can really hear is the cold breeze outside. If it weren't for what you find next, it could even be a little cozy. Dark Cut. This game was published on November 16, 2007 by John, and bears the description, "Cut people open using surgical tools of the Middle Ages. Heal them, following close instructions and using practical medical sense. Enjoy." Basically, you must treat your patient using dangerous methods but avoid killing them. I definitely played this game as a kid, but I had completely forgotten about it before researching for this iceberg. Pretty disgusting, but thankfully it's also pretty cartoonish. The worst thing about this game is the blaring music that repeatedly says, "This is how the world ends," over and over again. The Grudge. This is the first game of the iceberg that I haven't been able to play. The Grudge was a scary point-and-click flash game based on the 2004 version of the movie, and was created by Sony to promote the film. The gameplay involved playing the role of a housekeeper, assigned to fill a vacant position for the homeowner. In this role, you would collect clues to progress the game. Unfortunately, without Adobe Flash support, I haven't found a viable way to play it. Gretel and Hansel. Gretel and Hansel 1 was published on October 21st, 2009, and created by Mako Pudding, DJ King DB, and Mike Rudolph. Gretel and Hansel is an adventure point-and-click title with less of a focus on horror. It certainly has some creepy moments, but it has more of an old fairy tale feel, and stands out among the previous entries. The game's backgrounds and characters are all hand-painted, giving the game a unique look and charm that feels like it's right out of an old children's book. The second entry to the series is simply a continuation of the first, and both can be completed in less than an hour. Hotel 626 is another title that I have been unable to get my hands on to play. The premise was simple. You must escape a haunted hotel after waking up in one of the rooms at 2 a.m. Judging from the images and videos, it actually looks quite immersive for a Flash game, complete with cinematic cutscenes and eerie visuals. The fact that this game was created solely as a marketing gimmick by Doritos makes the game all the more interesting. Looking at the gameplay, it seems to be a game that would be even scarier with virtual reality, but I doubt any re-release or remake will ever happen. GhostScape series. GhostScape is, as the creator Psionic3D describes, a scary point-and-click adventure where you have to collect evidence of paranormal activity in a spooky old house, find diary pages to reveal the backstory, and perform an occult ceremony with 5 red candles to escape the house. The first game released on October 26, 2008, and the second a little over a year later on October 30th, 2009. While I believe this game would have been very scary had I played it when I was really young, it comes off as very cheesy now that I am an adult. but I don't think I am the intended audience anyway. It kind of feels like I am playing through a Goosebumps novel, which maybe was the vibe the creator was going with, but it certainly is, in my opinion, the least creepy on the Iceberg so far. The second game, GhostScape 2, The Cabin, is definitely a step up in creepiness, and I especially like the camera function where you're technically still just pointing and clicking, but it feels a bit more interactive. Although I'm not a fan of the blinking red eyes in the distance, I think that comes off just as cheesy as the previous game. But I also checked out some of Psionic 3D's other games, and saw that he also created the Killer Escape series, which I do remember playing and being scared of when I was younger. Escape the Boogeyman. There is very little information out there about this game, despite it being only on the second tier of the Iceberg. I've been unable to find a way to play it, and I haven't found any detailed description on who made the game, other than that it was created as a promotion for the 2005 film Boogeyman. Judging from the videos I found, it seems the game's objective was to simply escape the house while avoiding the Boogeyman. For a 2005 Flash game, the graphics seem pretty impressive. It is just unfortunate that it is now unplayable. The Visitor. The Visitor is a point-and-click game uploaded to Newgrounds on October 8, 2007 by ZBarf. When I saw this title on the Iceberg, I had no idea what it was, but upon finding it and playing it, memories flooded into my mind. The game begins just as an alien parasite lands on Earth, and your job is to help the parasite grow and get from one stage to the next. This mostly involves simple puzzles and sometimes pretty funny and or gross scenarios. The game is pretty cartoony, and while the premise is creepy, the gameplay is mostly comedic. Lomando.com. Lomando.com, also known as Fancy Island, was released around September 8, 2010, and is in my opinion the scariest Flash game on this Iceberg so far. Lomando is a browser horror game developed by the elusive Nojito and published on a GeoCities URL. The game is set in a haunted amusement park called Fancy Island, but this is difficult to discern from playing for a couple of minutes. The game is essentially another point-and-click game, but the format of going through different browsers and watching videos makes it feel completely different. The Japanese horror visuals do a pretty good job at creeping me out, and many of the sounds are pretty eerie too. None of the previous games have got me with a proper jump scare, but several of them got me in just a couple minutes of playing this. Deep Fancy Island. Deep Fancy Island is an expansion to Lomando.com released on January 6, 2023. The expansion takes place in an underground area connected to the Fancy Island amusement park, and from what I can tell, this expansion is accessible through playing the original Lomando, but I'm not entirely sure how. I'm intrigued by the lore of this game, so I plan on playing and covering more of it in the future. Free Ice Cream. Free Ice Cream was created by Sparky and published on Newgrounds on October 16, 2009. You play as a young girl who ends up in the Insane Cook's cellar after being promised free ice cream. You must then escape the house from there. I am surprised this was not on the first or second tier of the Iceberg, as I had thought this was one of the more famous of the Newground horror games. Maybe I'm wrong, but I definitely played this one when I was younger, while I was unfamiliar with some of the ones above it. This game is a classic for me, and I think the gameplay is really solid. It isn't all that scary, but it's certainly easier to follow than a game like Lomando. The Torture Game. The Torture Game was published by Seaman on April 19, 2012 to Congregate. The gameplay itself is very straightforward. Torture the poor soul in front of you for fun. I remember playing the sequel to this game, which was way more gory and realistic than this one, when I was way too young to be doing so. Maybe it was the morbid curiosity or the rush of playing a game that was probably intended for older kids, but now these games just seem like you would have to be a little strange to truly enjoy them. Purgatorium. Purgatorium is a point-and-click horror game created by Leffler Web Design, the same creator as Exmortis, and uploaded to Newgrounds on November 2, 2006. The game itself is pretty creepy, and I vaguely remember having played it before, and it does stand out from some of the other games as it all takes place in a single room, a creepy baby's room, and even has a little twist at the end. Other than that though, it's not all too remarkable compared to some of the other titles on this list. Nekra Psaria. Nekra Psaria is the first of a series of games created by Drawman Eater and uploaded to Newgrounds on July 30th, 2014. It is a point-and-click adventure with unique visuals that kinda reminds me of a blend between Dr. Seuss and Adventure Time. The game is certainly surreal and sometimes disturbing, although not really scary in my opinion. The objective is to make your TV work again, but you'll have to go through quite a lot to do so. The world is odd and difficult to understand, but that is of course part of the appeal. Forgotten Hill series. The Forgotten Hill series is quite a large one, numbering at least 25 titles. The games are developed by FM Studio, which, according to them, is a little indie team made by two persons. Francesco, the main developer, artist, and game designer, and his wife Manuela, who is in charge of writing, API integrations, editing, and all financial hassle. The first game, Forgotten Hill Fall, released in 2015, and is a short point-and-click horror title. I personally really like the sound design in this one. I don't know why in particular, but it's just satisfying. The game begins when your car breaks down and you must enter a creepy house, and then subsequently escape from it. It's definitely not the most original start, but it seems that the sheer amount of games in this series means that there's probably quite a bit of lore to get into. Black Licorice. Black Licorice is a very simple flash game released by Nickelodeon in 2002. The premise is simple. You are warned not to give black licorice to any of the trick-or-treaters at your door. You are then given a plate full of orange candies and a few pieces of the dreaded black licorice. You must be careful to only hand the children the orange candies. If you do give them the black licorice, the children turn into demons, and then you slam the door in their face. The game is honestly pretty hilarious, but if I played this game released by Nickelodeon of all companies as a child, I probably would have cried. Crimson Room. Crimson Room is an escape room game developed by Toshimitsu Tagaki and released in 2004. The game itself can probably be completed in under 5 minutes by a very creative person, but I ended up watching a walkthrough because I did not think to open and close the curtain several times to get the ring. The game is definitely far from scary, but I can understand why some may consider it creepy and tense because it does have some odd sound design choices, and I think we are all used to games like this throwing in a random jump scare. Goliath the Soothsayer. Goliath the Soothsayer is yet another game created by Leffler Web Design and released to Newgrounds on January 30th, 2008. Surprisingly, this game is based on a true story from one of my personal favorite bands, the Mars Volta. The game begins after you were assigned to take care of your brother's estate following his unexplained disappearance, but odd things start happening as soon as you walked into his now empty house. One day you awake to find yourself somehow imprisoned in the attic. I had never played or heard of this game before, but it's actually pretty good. It's creepy, tense, and has a couple moments where I jumped while playing. SpongeBob Saves the Day. This entry is not so much about the gameplay of the 2019 point-and-click game SpongeBob Saves the Day, but what was found in the game's files. According to the Gaming Urban Legends wiki, while a group of enthusiasts were going through the game's files, they noticed that they were able to find sprite sheets that were just off the frame for each of the game's zones, appearing when triggered. When they got to the Krusty Krab sheet, this character appeared among the other stored objects of the environment. After many emails were sent to the development team, they finally came out with some official statements about the origins of this character. The character, Yum, is a modeling test that was created around the year 2010. He had become a meme around the office, and they used Yum as a placeholder, as he was recognizable when going back and editing work. So yeah, the team simply forgot to remove him, and thus the character's model still remains on the game's atlas. PETA games. This entry is not in reference to a single game, but several. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA, created a gaming tab on their website, hosting a variety of original and parody titles such as Meat is Murder the Game, Mario Kills Tanuki, and Super Tofu Boy. The games themselves aren't anything special, but I don't think PETA's intention was to make a fantastic game, just to get clicks and raise awareness. Arrival in Hell. Arrival in Hell is a point-and-click game developed by Skidday and Sikla, and released on Newgrounds on November 16, 2006. You are a prisoner who just awoke from a horrible nightmare, which suddenly becomes reality. You must escape before you are killed by a nightmarish creature that is wreaking havoc in the prison. While the game is cartoonish, there is a large amount of shocking visuals, such as a room absolutely covered in entrails, blood, and body parts. The game is also pretty complex, and even has several different endings. Neverending Light. Neverending Light is a top-down survival horror game produced by Jigman and released on Congregate on February 10, 2009. The game begins as you receive a tour of the Kablid Caves with your girlfriend, an underground system renowned for its extreme darkness. As planned, the lights are shut off, but they do not return, and a mysterious creature kills the tour guide. Your girlfriend is gone, and nobody else is left when you pick up a flashlight the tour leader dropped. You then must escape. This game is impressive. It has fully voiced characters and smooth animations. I'm surprised I've never heard or played it before, and it seems the game had a planned sequel, but it was unfortunately never released. Save the Bunny is a surgery game which I unfortunately cannot find much information on. Luckily, I was able to play it, and it is a very odd game that is over before you even realize what happened. Essentially, I think the bunny swallows the cursor as you click on him, and you must perform surgery to get it out. All in, it takes roughly a minute to play through, but shaving the bunny's belly and seeing a belly button and a tattoo was pretty funny.